All right, this afternoon one of the things we want to do is we want to talk about beginning properties of inequalities. This is chapter 1.5 and we're going to talk about solving inequalities. First thing we need to do is we need to talk about the properties of inequalities. Now, for any number a and b, there are three ways that these two numbers real numbers a and b, they can relate three different ways. A can be less than b, a can equal b, and a can be greater than b. It's only three ways that those three numbers can relate. That's called the trichotomy property. Okay, trichotomy. Tri meaning three, and it has three ways of relating. That's the only three ways they can relate. Okay? Now, let's talk about the particular properties, and let's talk about them for, number one, addition. So, addition inequality properties. For any real number, numbers A, B, and C. That's what we're talking about. Any real numbers A, B, and C. For addition, if A is greater than B, then A plus C is greater than B plus C. Okay? If A is less than B, then A plus C is less than B plus C. Very simple. All right? Now let's talk about it for subtraction. If A is greater than B, then A plus C is greater than, whoa, we're doing subtraction, aren't we? Let's get this right then. A minus C is greater than B minus C. Okay? And if A is less than B, then A minus C is less than B minus C. Okay? Pretty simple. We did the same thing for properties of equality for addition and subtraction. And these are very similar. Okay? Meaning basically for inequalities we can add anything to both sides. Okay? To one side as long as we do it to both sides. We can subtract anything from one side as long as we subtract it from both sides, regardless of whether it's greater than or less than. That's addition and subtraction. Alright? Now it changes when we go to multiplication and division. So let's talk about that. Let's go back up and for any real numbers A, B, and C. Okay? Let's talk about multiplication. Alright? We have to talk about two different cases. If C is greater than 0, that means it is C is positive. Okay? It is greater than 0. If C is positive, then if A is greater than B, then A plus C is greater than B plus C. If A is less than B, then A, well, messed this up, didn't I? We're talking about multiplication, so let's do multiplication. A times C is greater than B times C. And down here, if A is less than B, then A times C is less than B times C. Now, however, if C is less than 0, that means C is negative. Then, if A is greater than B, A times C is less than B times C. And if A is less than B, then A times C is greater than B times C. Now look at that very carefully. Notice that for C greater than 0, positive, all right? The signs go the same way. A greater than B, AC is greater than BC. A less than B, AC is less than BC. However, if C is negative, less than 0, then if A is greater than B and we multiply both sides by C, this flips around. It changes direction. Okay? Same thing here. If A is less than B, then A times C is then greater than B times C. So it changes depending on what C is, what we're doing with it. If we're multiplying by negative and we have inequalities, these signs are going to flip. If we're multiplying by a positive, they're going to remain the same. Now, what do you think is going to happen with division? Huh? Division, multiplication, have addition and subtraction. They act more like equalities. Multiplication, changed a little bit. So what do you think about multiplication and division? Division, think they're going to act the same? Well, division. If C is greater than 0, C is positive, and if A is greater than B, then it follows that A divided by C is going to be greater than B divided by C. And if A is less than B, then it's going to follow that A divided by C is less than B divided by C. Okay? That's great. What happens when? If C is less than 0, meaning C is negative. If A is greater than B, then A divided by C is going to be less than B divided by C. And if A is less than B, then it's going to follow that A divided by C is going to be greater than B divided by C. So division works just like multiplication does. These properties, okay, act a little bit different. So inequalities, that's what seems to make them difficult. It all depends. If we're doing multiplication and division and C is negative, you know, we've got a flip-flop on our hands. If C is positive, it's no big deal. It's just like solving an inequality. Okay? These are the properties of inequality as it pertains to solving equations.